Thank you very much for two brilliant talks. We have an interesting something overlapping between the two talks regarding the victimization of women, but from a completely different perspectives. One in turn of the century Austro-Hungarian, with reference to many intellectual literature that somehow legitimized the Lustmord. And we have another perspective on the subject of nationalist, somehow not excluding but branding the woman as the ultimate victim. And what's so striking in both cases is the idea of the man somehow constructing himself as a victim in a way, as a Heiliger, that he allows himself this legitimization as Christ, the representative, to commit crimes. And in the case of Izquierdo, we have this repetition of the mourning woman, the woman who is mourning, the classical iconography. And just before I open the discussion, I wanted to ask the role of the Heiliger as a savior is really being abused here in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. As you told, Kokoschka considered himself as victim. There are several representations of the Pietà, where you can see Alma Mahler with Kokoschka, dead Kokoschka in her arms. But, well, if he is in her arms, he is still Jesus Christ. It means that he will live and the woman will die.
Yeah. And in regard to the mourning, I was saying it, the mourning woman, was it a kind of reference to media reception of women after the in Mexico, or was it a kind of a popular reference to it's like a catecholamines reference that they can't come out from mourning over the children, over the situation?
I think that's true, and I think she's also in sort of placing the woman as the sort of passive victim and always mourning. She is questioning the rhetoric of the revolution, which was saying woman is equal, woman should be empowered. So it's the reality, the reality of what she was experiencing against the sort of the iconography that was dominating on the walls. Is how I see it, but it maybe.
Thank you. Frage? Yeah, Bernadette.
Vielen Dank. Shall I speak in English? It's better. So thank you both for your lectures, and I have a question to the second talk, and this is where the pictures, where were they exhibited? So I asked for the reception of these pictures in that time. So I also don't know it about the Frida Kahlo pictures. Were they more privately, or were they exhibited, and who was the audience?
Well, Izquierdo did exhibit. She was actually quite successful as a painter, and I mean she was the only one really to challenge the big muralists at all on their own ground. She exhibited, but those odd paintings of the 1936, 1937, they're very peculiar. I think some of them were brought back by Artaud to Paris and shown in an exhibition in Paris and were then lost. Some of them are in Mexico. She did exhibit them at the time. I haven't found very much in terms of response to them. The Kahlo, I'm afraid I should have looked into where exactly Unos Cuantos Pecaditos was shown, because it is such a shocking painting. And I think it was probably shown in New York. And people were shocked by it. Yes, yeah.
Other questions? Yeah, Anna.
Thank you, both of you, for two fascinating talks. And I have a question for you, Dawn. And I was thinking about, I mean, it's striking how often surrealist women artists denounce feminism, and or sort of, you know, artists that we scholars think of as feminists, but they sort of didn't want to be associated with the movement of feminism. And most of them tended to say this, of course, in the aftermath of the second wave of feminism in the 70s and 80s. But what's her name? Izquierdo, sorry, I don't know her very well. It was really interesting to see, to hear your talk. So I was wondering, when did she say this, renounce feminism as a movement, and what was the kind of context that she was reacting to? Like, what kind of feminist sentiments were around in Mexico at that time that she was kind of responding to?
Yes, but a very, very good question. There is a entire chapter of a book about Izquierdo and Carlo, looking at feminism in that, and denying that either of them is a feminist, which is possibly true, depending on how you define feminism. And she is clearly, she is, as I say, sort of suggesting her own brand of feminism. Now, exactly what was around at the time is 1950, she writes that. So it's after she's had the great disappointment of the rejection of her mural project. There was, I mean, you had a fairly strong communist presence in Mexico at the time, which of course, you know, was not interested in feminism, because the view was that when proper equality and social equality and political equality was available for everybody, there was no need for feminism. So there's that side of it. So I think she was certainly aware of that, because, well, Frida Kahlo, I won't try and go into that at all. But she then, I mean, she says she's not a classic feminist, Izquierdo, that she's, you know, she neither believes women should take over, nor does she hate men. And in fact, she goes on in that quote, which I cut out because I didn't have time, but she goes on in that quote to say, nowadays, a modern urban woman in Mexico City goes and has breakfast, meets her friends, goes to work. She's quite normal. She'll meet someone she falls in love with, marry them, but be independent because she can earn her own living. And that's her idea of feminism: somebody who can actually sort of live in a normal way, but be independent. So I think that's quite interesting, and I think it's quite different, probably either from attitudes to women in the Communist Party, or in the sort of cultural nationalism of Mexico itself, where it was very ambiguous in terms of where women were. And I just have to very quickly say, I realize that Freud himself is completely absent from almost absent from this talk. And I apologize for that, because there's a wonderful book about Freud in Mexico, which really needs to be brought in. So I'm just saying that. Sorry.
If there are no further questions, I have one to Régine. Sorry. Yeah.
Vielen Dank, Régine, für deinen tollen Vortrag. Wie du weißt, hat sich Kokoschka, und du weißt das am besten, weil du darüber auch publiziert hast, dass er sich intensiv mit Mutterrecht vom Backofen beschäftigt hat. Mich würde jetzt diese Zusammenschau nochmal interessieren. Das ist das eine. And the other thing is that I realized also in the second lecture that the genitals of the males are always covered. So it's in an antique setting with Kokoschka, and it's the globe or the cosmological earth or whatever. And there is only one aquarelle, Régine, you know it, from the Lustmörder aquarelle, I think it's in Los Angeles, where you can see explicitly the male genitals, but it's really rare. Of course, we know it does not be needed to represent the male genital, because the power lies within the man. But mich würde das mit dem Mutterrecht noch interessieren.
I would like to pick up on Bernadette's great question, because the matriarch also played in feminist theories at the time. So there was a word feminism in Austria at the turn of the century, and there were theories about gender roles that were started by Georg Simmel, and women psychologists later unpicked on. And the matriarch, the possibility that women will take over control, played in this worldview. And feminism we also have at the turn of the century with Beta Chris, we have Jerusalem, we have many feminists in 1902. I mean, we have bestsellers, authors. So this must have provoked, that's not the right word, yeah, for a kind of a very radical, aggressive defense, again, not the right word, of men like Weininger, also Freud later on, and Kokoschka in reaction to this claiming authority. And one of the references, so matriarch is a good reference here in regard to women's possibility of or attempt to claim their rights in society. Aber Deutsch, bitte.
Antworte ich dir in Deutsch, dass wir die Frage
ja.
Es gibt eine sehr wichtige Quelle, um Kokoschka zu interpretieren und zu verstehen. Das ist das Buch von dem Basler Rechtsgelehrten Bachofen, Das Mutterrecht. Und er rekonstruiert die Geschichte folgendermaßen: In Urzeiten herrschte das Matriarchat. Ein Kind wusste nicht, wer der Vater ist, war auch egal, die Mutter war wichtig. Und es war freie Liebe, die Frau suchte sich ihren Mann aus. Und dann gibt es eine zweite Phase in der Geschichte, der Heterismus, also auch die freie Liebe. Und dann mit den Römern kommt das Patriarchat, wo die Frau dann unterdrückt wird. Und in Mörderhoffnung der Frauen werden angeblich nach einigen Interpretationen die 3 Phasen dargestellt. Die Frau mit ihrem Gefolge kommt auf die Bühne, zeigt ihre Stärke. Während die Frau mit dem Mann kämpft, paaren sich die Gefährtinnen aus ihrem Gefolge mit den Gefährten, den Männern aus dem Gefolge des Mannes. Anspielung auf den Heterismus. Und dann wird die Frau unterdrückt, Anspielung auf die 3. Phase in der Geschichte, das Patriarchat. Und Kokoschka schreibt hier in seiner Autobiografie, dass er zutiefst von diesen Matriarchatstheorien beeinflusst war. Und das zieht sich, gerade in den 30er Jahren ist es extrem bei ihm, wird es immer stärker bei ihm.
Ja. Ja, Monika. Oh, sorry. No, and the genitals, the hidden genitals, men's genitals, as a part of the aggression act.
Yes, in satire. In allegory of work. Yes. With the sort of cosmic.
But I think it's true. Works of many works that the genitals, the male genitals, are not seen. Also in the Frida Kahlo painting, for example, the man is in clothes. It was just in my mind.
And she in that painting, the woman is in the position of Christ being taken out of the tomb. You know, it's a very hidden but quite deliberate reference. No, that's not your question. Sorry.
Monica.
Thank you both very much for your wonderful lectures. Dawn, when was that? Was the mural that was she could not build? It was in 1945.
1945. It was before she painted Dream and Foreboding.
Okay.
And really, she never quite recovered from it, from the failure of the mural project.
What I think is so impressive is that she also gave the position of an architect, this metaphor for somebody who is building our Kiesler spoke about technical environment, and that makes our lives worthwhile and useful, and that this architect is a female one. So and that was I think this metaphor of a female architect is a very special statement. I just want to. And I can imagine that as an artist, identifying the power of women as being architects and therefore so important for the building of our society, of our cities, of our lives. But it's such a strong metaphor, and it's interesting that, and it's not. I do not want. It's not. Was heißt verwunderlich? It's not astonishing or surprising that she was not able to fulfill to make this mural because of the intervention of her male colleagues. So.
I think that's right. I mean, you put it beautifully, but I think the idea that the woman is the active one in the modern world. She is building life. She's building the future. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, the future.
Yes.
One more question, Patricia. Yeah, please. What is okay? Es gibt zwei. For sure. Okay, for sure.
I'd like to thank for the two really very interesting talks as well. Thank you so much. Ich habe eine Frage an Regine, und zwar, da ist eine Bühne ja im Hintergrund, oder die sind auf der Bühne, das sind Zuschauer, Zuseher. Und ich wollte nur fragen, was haben die für eine Bedeutung oder ja.
Also das zeigt, dass es eben ein Theaterstück ist. Man sieht im Hintergrund dieser Szene einen Bühnenvorhang und es schauen Männer raus, die auch alle glatzköpfig sind, und das sind die Männer aus dem Gefolge des Mannes, denke ich. Das sind keine Zuschauer, weil die auch halt nackt eben erscheinen und auf die Bühne drängen.
Dankeschön. Wir haben noch eine Frage von Regie oder noch eine dort? Noch eine? No. So Regie.
I wonder if the crew, you showed a picture, a painting with a man murdering a woman. Is there maybe a photo she found in the press, in the mass media, which served her for a kind of model for this painting?
I mean, she certainly read about the case in the newspaper. But I don't think I think she invented the setting. I think she took there might have been, I don't know, but I don't think there's an actual source for it in the newspaper. I think she's based it much more on sort of religious scene, which is also kind of undermining.
I don't know if it's possible to show one photo, which was in my PowerPoint afterwards, just to open it again, to show you an important source. Am Schluss noch eins. Gehen Sie übers Ende hinaus, das da genau. Because in 1910, Erich Wolfen published a book, Der Sexualverbrecher, with terrible photos of real murders, prostitutes, and this was a very important source. It was the same year when the drawing of Kokoschka appeared. And this was very important for painters. Rudolf Schlichter, for example, you know his terrible murder scenes from the Weimar Republic. You know, you have in mind the drawings and paintings of Otto Dix, Schlichter, George Grosz, and they found their sources in this kind of criminal books with real photos of murders.
I wonder if you knew it. I mean, it would be amazing. I'll
if the library.
Yes, I mean, I think it wouldn't be that particular incident, but she could have actually based it upon previous, something like that. Yes.
And the special thing is the covers female face.
Yeah.
Yes, quite.
It's just a remark. I think in the same time the Kriminalmuseum in Vienna was founded. So also the interest in cruelty and especially in this Lustmorde.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure when it was founded, but I know that maybe you know the director.
It would be interesting to know if there were pictures, photos of this kind of murdered women and prostitutes.
It's really odd. So it's a very narrow space and you walk very close to awful photos and objects.
Daniela?
Eben auch nur kurz eine Frage zur Rezeption des Textes.
Régine, Sie haben erzählt, dass es eben einen Artikel in der Fackel gab von Ehrenstein.
Nein, das war der Karl Hauer.
Karl Hauer, genau.
Erotik der Grausamkeit.
Genau, und hat Kraus selbst darüber geschrieben? Welche Rezeption hat quasi auch innerhalb der Fackel jenseits von diesem Text von Hauer?
Wie sich der Text von Hauer in Schriften von Karl Kraus widerspiegelt? Oder zum Beispiel?
Nein, wie auch Kokoschkas Stück quasi in der Fackel seinen Niederschlag gefunden hat. Ob Sie da was wissen?
Nicht, dass ich wüsste. Okay. Das liegt eben daran, dass das Stück wurde uraufgeführt 1909 und es gab eigentlich noch gar keinen Text, der jetzt richtig fixiert war. Und der Text erscheint ja erst 1910 im Sturm. Das ist also nach der Publikation von Erotik der Grausamkeit, der 1907 erschienen ist. Von daher gibt es da keinen Zusammenhang. Okay. Ja.
Und ich glaube, Karl Kraus hat die literarischen Werke in Kokoschka nicht geschätzt.
Also Kraus fand Kokoschka, glaube ich, als Maler sehr spannend, aber ich glaube als Schriftsteller jetzt furchtbar.
Und es gab genug Inspirationen bei Karl Kraus, weil er hat auch Avicenna, der Pseudonym für Wittels, eine Kollege von Freud dort auch, über diesen Kampf von Männer und Frauen. So, es gab genug in Karl Kraus, die Fackel Inspirationen für diese Mode, Hoffnung der Frauen.
Wie Bernadette es schon sagte, Kokoschka hatte ja auch die Ambition, früh Schriftsteller und Dichter zu werden. Und es gibt einen Brief von Kraus an Adolf Loos, wo er schreibt, Kokoschka musste ihm schwören, nie wieder so einen Schmarren zu schreiben. Das war ein Gedicht über die Isolde am Notbett oder so. Und das wurde abgelehnt von Kraus, der Kokoschka klargemacht hat, dass das Talent eindeutig mehr in der bildenden Kunst liegt.
Aber für Kraus war es nicht über sein Talent oder nicht, es war über diese Provokation, unbedingt Provokation gegen bürgerliche Werte, oder?
Ja, genau. Das habe ich versucht klarzustellen, dass Kokoschka sich auch die Haare oder den Kopf kahl geschoren hat. Das war ja auch ein Statement als der Rebell. Das heißt, er hätte das als Reaktion auf die Kritik in der Presse gemacht. Aber es war einfach ein Zeichen. Wer war kahl geschoren? Wer hatte Tätowierung? Das war ein Verbrecher. Er stellt sich also bewusst als Verbrecher dar.
Ja, okay. Vielen herzlichen Dank. Thank you very, very much for great talks. I think if there are any further questions, we will now have a break for how long?
Until 11:30.
Bis 11:30, yeah. And we will reconvene here. Wir kommen zurück hierher 11:30. Ja, danke.